Made in Hollywood.
The biographical war drama Lee, starring Kate Winslet, is made in Hollywood.
I knew who Lee Miller was. I was familiar with her photography, but I did not know what she had gone through.
Made in Hollywood.
Also on today's show, a heroine races to stop a kidnapping in the abduction thriller Amber Alert, starring Hayden Panettiere.
It was similar to how I learned how to play a character in a horror film, because my first experience and my first teacher was Wes Craven himself.
Plus, the horror drama Hereafter features Connie Britton, Mekhi Phifer, and Frank Grillo star in the action thriller Long Gone Heroes. And we also look at what's new on Blu-ray with Micah Monroe. This week on Made in Hollywood.
Made in Hollywood.
Kate Winslet stars as one of the most fascinating photographers of the 20th century who heads to the front lines of World War II in the biographical drama Lee.
I was born determined. I was good at drinking, having sex, and taking pictures. And I did all three as much as I could.
I knew who Lee Miller was. I was familiar with her photography, but I did not know what she had gone through and how unbelievably determined she was to get permission to go to the front line and to document the war and the atrocities of the Nazi regime.
Not everyone can believe this. Surely they can see what he is.
The question is, what are you going to do, Lee Miller?
Before I'd even read the screenplay, she talked me through a lot of Lee's life and Audrey and Lee's relationship. And so that was really my first coming to.
I had seen the photo, but didn't know her name or the impact that it had, the bathtub photo, of course. And I was immediately drawn in, and at a certain point even forgot that I was reading it for my own involvement, possibly, because I just was swept up in her story and thought like, oh yeah, and maybe I could be in it.
And you were.
And then I was, and now I'm here.
I hear you're the woman to see about a job.
I am.
We don't hire older models.
I'm not a model anymore.
I'd rather take a picture than be one.
I could see very clearly that history was in danger of pigeonholing her and defining her through the male gaze. She was described as the former muse and ex-lover of Man Ray. She was an ex-cover girl, you know, former Vogue, all this former stuff. Like, the interesting bits of her life had been and gone, which really bothered me because Lee was a woman who lived many, many lives, actually, within her life, even beyond the war.
As lovely and vast as Lee's life was, and it had all of its light and shade, I just knew that Kate had worked so very hard to make this a reality, and I just knew that she was going to do it with such care and respect. And it's an absolute joy to work with her, so I was really, really grateful to be part of it.
I'm with Vogue magazine.
There's no women allowed in the press briefing.
You've got to be kidding me.
We don't send women to combat.
Well, that's a problem, because I'm here. Why should the men get to decide?
I mean, it was a joy working with Kate. I learned so much just standing next to her in shots. You know, honestly, the whole cast, some of whom I didn't share scenes with, but are all mind-blowingly talented to me. And so for me to sort of start a dramatic experience with such an esteemed group was really cool for me.
Bad things do happen to some of us girls.
Her photography was unique. She was able to look down into that Rolleiflex camera at her image, but look up and meet people's gaze head on, and she was unafraid of doing that. And that is what sets her work apart, and that is what war correspondents do.
There are different kinds of wounds. Not just the ones you can see.
An ordinary rideshare turns into a deadly game of cat and mouse in the high-stakes thriller Amber Alert, starring Hayden Panettiere and Tyler James Williams.
I got a live one here. Charlotte Bryce, 7 years old, yellow dress, white shoes, pink socks. Abduction. Right in front of her mom.
Charlotte! It was a story that I knew, I felt in my gut needed to be told.
This is Sergeant Casey requesting an Amber Alert, immediate dispatch.
A lot of projects are not shot in chronological order, but I really loved that they made a conscious decision to shoot this movie in the order as much as possible.
Yes, I think I see the car from the Amber Alert. Get closer.
Similar to how I learned how to play a character in a horror film, because my first experience and my first teacher was Wes Craven himself. In order to get that scare, that jump, means that we have to slow down. It almost feels like acting in slow motion. But then when it's edited together and you bring the music in, the roller coaster rolls the way we want for the audience.
We saw her.
You saw Charlotte Bryce.
We're trying to catch up to him.
We're doing like 100 miles an hour. If he sees us, he could do something crazy.
Listen, you need to back off that car.
I felt at first ashamed of myself for getting these Amber Alerts and not taking more time to look around me and being of the mindset that the chances of me being the person who runs into this abducted child or this car are slim to none. But realizing that if I thought that way, how many other people are thinking that way? How many other people have just turned that alert off on their phones? And to remind people to hopefully change people's perspectives on Amber Alerts.
Charlotte?
Coming up, Connie Britton stars in the supernatural thriller Hereafter, and the action drama Long Gone Heroes features Frank Grillo and Mekhi Phifer. To find out where to watch any movie, check out Moviefone.com. Find it, watch it.
Tone is really one of the most important things always, because tone is such a pivotal part of telling the story.
Made in Hollywood. Made in Hollywood.
Now on digital. A mother begins to suspect that her daughter's miraculous revival has come with a dark cost in the supernatural thriller Hereafter, starring Connie Britton.
I'm so proud of you.
She was clinically dead for 20 minutes. The likelihood of brain damage is probable. It's a question of to what degree.
I've always been afraid of horror movies. Like, that's not been my go-to genre, but I was really moved by this story when I read it, and it tapped into some very maternal feelings that I experience in my life, and in, you know, kind of this supernatural way.
She's changed. There's something different since the accident.
It makes sense, Claire, what you've just been through.
Everything okay, Mama?
There's a thing of carrying guilt with you and carrying this repressed feeling and bottling it down. And on the surface, everything can look fine, but eventually there's somewhere, some way, somehow, that's gonna burble up. It's gonna come out.
Mom guilt is a thing. It's real. Parent guilt is real. And I really was trying to explore my own guilt and what it would feel like if that was ratcheted up to here and heightened to a point where I couldn't see the world in any other way other than through the filter of that guilt.
Is there anything your daughter has been through that she may have internalized? It is usually some sort of emotional trauma.
Was never meant to be a horror film, so this was more supposed to be a thriller. I wanted it dramatic, and so finding the right combination there was what was important.
Tone is really one of the most important things always, because tone is such a pivotal part of telling the story. And so I was constantly trying to understand what my role was between grounding the movie in reality, but also understanding that there was this supernatural element to it.
My daughter brought someone back with her from the other side. I think I know who it is.
Now streaming on demand. After his niece is kidnapped, an elite soldier is forced back into action as Frank Grillo and Mekhi Phifer star in the heart-pounding thriller, Long Gone Heroes.
They got my baby. And they took her because she's found out what I've done.
What'd you do?
She has video implicating all of us. And there is no way he's letting our girl out of there alive.
There was another director attached that I was involved with the script that he had written. And right before we was going to start shooting, it kind of fell apart. And I called John Swab immediately.
Frank called me about a month out from shooting. They had parted ways with the original writer-director. And he said, have you ever been to Puerto Rico? And I said, no. And he said, do you want to go? And I said, when? And he said, well, this week.
Yeah, he came and then he added Josh Hutcherson to the cast, and we went to Bogota, Colombia, and started shooting. And John did a great job.
And we revamped the entire thing, including a couple of cast members, and we went and made the movie.
There are consequences to your actions. There's a video on his phone. It's encrypted. I need you to unlock it.
You can't make me.
In Venezuela, I'll do whatever I want, sweetheart.
I'm involved from the beginning to the end. My stuntman, Greg Fitzpatrick, who's done all my movies with me, he is really, he's the leader of it all, and he kind of puts it together. We didn't have time, brother, so we kind of choreographed it on the day.
It was all figured out on the day, but we shot 70% of this movie in Puerto Rico. And then they ran out of money. And then 6 months later, they called me and like, hey, we can finish the movie, but we're going to finish it in Colombia. But a lot of the actors that we used in Puerto Rico weren't available anymore.
She's a journalist. She got too close to something down there, and she pissed off the wrong people. I got a guy who's going to get us in.
Kid's a whiz with computers.
And you know how to use that thing? You're going to be okay down there, yeah?
I'm good.
I was a little skeptic of Josh because he's a child actor, and I was like, I don't really see him in this role. And he's another guy I fell in love with, by the way. I love him, and I think he's a badass. I mean, he's not backing down from anybody.
Josh is one of the smartest actors I've ever worked with in terms of filmmaking. Like he's been acting since he was like 6. So when he walks on a movie set, he's smarter than everybody.
And Melissa Leo's Melissa Leo. You get Melissa Leo, you get Andy Garcia. Anything they do brings a certain gravitas and believability to the movie.
To be able to work with people of that caliber really gives you a certain confidence and motivation to keep doing what you're doing.
Everyone you see is a threat.
It works on pretty much every level for a movie this size. We didn't get to make a movie for like Extraction for $75 million. This is a $10, $12 million movie. So there you have it.
What you got yourself into down here?
To find out where to watch any movie, check out Moviefone.com. Find it, watch it. Up next, we look at what's new on Blu-ray with Maika Monroe in the psychological thriller Longlegs.
Lee is very different from me, from who I am, and I thought that would be a very interesting challenge, sort of removing myself completely from this role.
Made in Hollywood. Made in Hollywood.
Now available on Blu-ray. An FBI agent in pursuit of a serial killer races to decipher a series of occult clues as Maika Monroe and Nicolas Cage star in the horror thriller Longlegs.
Is it scary being a lady FBI agent? Yeah.
Take a nice long look. A letter was left with the bodies. Signed with one word.
My first reaction was, I want to be a part of this.
You know, it was Oz Perkins. We had talked first. I read the script, and we talked. I just loved where his head was, where he was going with it. Oz, who directed it, also wrote it, of course.
When I first read this script, every bone in my body said yes.
I saw a beast rise up out of the sea with 7 heads and 10 horns.
Lee is very different from me, from who I am, and I thought that that would be a very interesting challenge, sort of removing myself completely from this role.
What aren't you telling me?
He'll kill and kill again.
I began with sort of going back to her childhood. She obviously went through some very severe trauma. You know, that's what makes her who she is and how she goes through the world.
I know you're not afraid of a little bit of dark. Because you are the dark.
The central idea is that parents tell lies and stories to their children, that parents are sort of in charge of the perception of a child, and what a delicate responsibility that is. And that was what the movie was about for me.
You could have made nice with me.
The movie itself and the characters within the movie are people in the world we think we've seen before. Even the movie itself, we think it's familiar, we think we've seen it before, and it turns out not to be the case.
Using Silence of the Lambs as sort of just this recognizable touchstone, it's like this. It's like a woman detective, and it's like she's out of her element, and it's like there's a killer that they can't find, and you know.
But you didn't. And that has led to all.
Connecting with Oz on our first Zoom meeting, I prayed even harder after that call that it had been as deep a connection on his end as it was on mine.
I was just intrigued to see how we're gonna pull this story together.
The idea was to really sort of tenderize the audience's consciousness and awareness and readiness for a thing that they thought it was going to be, and then of course it's not that.
Stay tuned, there's more coming up on Made in Hollywood.
Made in Hollywood.
Thanks for watching Made in Hollywood, powered by MoviePhone. For more behind-the-screen content, check out MoviePhone.com.